All right, so 10 turned into 20, but I'll try to avoid that in the future. We are ready to continue, however, so State may call your next witness.
Over here, please. Raise your right hand. Hopefully, do something.
I do.
Sir, if you would state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter, please.
My name is Harry Campbell. Last name is spelled C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L.
And by whom were you employed?
With the Starr County Coroner's Office.
How long have you been employed with the Starr County Coroner's Office?
I'm starting my 23rd year.
What are your duties with the Starr County Coroner Office?
I am the chief investigator for the county.
And as the chief investigator for the Starr County Coroner's Office, what do you do?
In a broad description is I am responsible for going to scenes or taking phone calls or whatever to gather information so that the coroner can sign a death certificate to cause and manner of death.
Are you also a police officer?
I am.
And how long have you been a police officer?
I've been sworn since 1986.
Have you had any training and education throughout your career as the chief investigator for the Starr County Coroner?
In forensics and medical legal, yes, sir.
What types of training have you had?
I attended the Death Investigator School at St. Louis University School of Medicine in '94. I am both registered and a board-certified medical legal death investigator. As such, I have to do continuing education each year. I have an extensive background in firearms, ballistics, reloading, civilian firearms.
You indicated that you're board certified in medical legal death investigation.
Yes, sir.
What does it mean to be board certified?
It means that there is a governing board, which is called the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators, and they set down a set of standards that an individual in the field, after X number of years, can attain a registration, which means that you have to study various medical tests, forensic tests, and you have to take a very long test. Then if you have a college background as well, you can go on to be board certified, which is another series of tests, evaluation of photographs, things like that.
And you've successfully completed all those tests?
I have.
And you're board certified?
Yes, sir.
When did you become board certified?
2007, I believe.
You indicated that you have to, because you're board certified, maintain some continuing legal education requirements?
Yes, sir.
And are you current in those requirements?
I am.
Could you tell us, Mr. Campbell, in 22 years of employment with the Starr County Coroner's Office, approximately how many crime scenes have you been asked to respond to?
I've handled more than 5,000 actual deaths. I would say at least 1,000.
Some of
1,000
those
scenes, excuse me. Scenes, which would be everything.
Some of those involve shootings in homes?
Oh, yes, sir.
How many of those would you estimate?
I would say shootings in my world would be a suicide, homicide, accidental. There are probably several hundred.
When you respond to a shooting in a home, be it a homicide or a suicide or accidental, do you have a protocol that you follow?
I have a general series of things that I do, yes.
Can you just briefly outline what that protocol is for these folks on the jury?
When I go to a scene, I will be called by the law enforcement agency or the hospital or whatever. Everything's going to be different. So generally speaking, I'm going to arrive. I document my time, what time I got there, obviously the address I went to. Then I will meet whoever's in charge at the scene. It may be a detective, it may be a patrol officer, it may be someone from the fire department. Then I will just ask them, what is the one paragraph summary? Just give me in brief what happened. So they will tell me, then I will do a walkthrough, and then I will just start processing the scene based on what I need to do and what I'm looking at. You know, there may be occasions where, in the case of a homicide, law enforcement takes the lead doing what they have to do. At a fire scene, it may be the fire department, so I work with them. It's never a turf war. We always work together.
Okay. That protocol, you said part of it is a walkthrough,
Yes, sir.
and as you conduct a walkthrough, are you careful not to disturb any evidence?
Absolutely.
Now, if you're at a homicide scene, do you sometimes arrive on that scene prior to the detectives that are going to be investigating the case?
Yes, sir.
And if you're there prior to their arrival, what protocol do you follow?
Generally, I may walk around and take photographs, trying to make use of my time until they get there, but I don't alter anything. I may just get more information about the scene, but it's either gathering more information, starting writing my report, and taking photographs, generally.
I want to take your attention back to December 31st and into January 1st of 2014, 2015. Were you employed with the Stark County Coroner on that day?
Yes, sir.
53 Oak Trail in Massillon, Stark County, the state of Ohio?
Yes, sir.
Where were you at when you got that call?
I was at my home.
Do you recall which agency contacted you?
I would have been called by my sheriff's department. They would have received a call from Massillon.
Upon receipt of that call, what do?
I get dressed, I get in the car, and I drive.
When you arrive at the Oak Trail residence, can you tell me what you observe as you get out of your vehicle?
The first thing I would have done is document the time I arrived. Then I saw the police cars, I saw the activity. I walked up and talked to one of the officers, I don't recall which, and just said, what happened real quick. And he just gave me a quick sentence of what happened, and I knew from dispatch part of the story. Then when I went upstairs and I met with the officer who was documenting on his in and out list.
So there was an officer stationed outside the residence?
Yes, sir.
Then there was one stationed inside the residence at the top of the stairs?
Once I entered the residence, yes.
Once you entered the residence. And that officer was documenting people who were coming and going?
No, the documentation of coming and going was a gentleman outside.
All right. You get to the top of the stairs, do you observe anything at that point in time?
The top of the stairs outside?
Yes.
Just speaking with the officer, no. Then I actually entered the residence.
And when you enter the residence, can you tell me what you recall as you enter the residence? What type of entryway is it? Those kinds of things.
It was just a flat entryway with a series of stairs going upwards.
And where was that second officer that you encountered?
He was upstairs in the hallway.
When you go up the steps, do you have a conversation with him?
Correct.
And what, as a result of that conversation, do you make any observations?
Did I what, sir?
Did you make any observations as a result of talking to that officer?
He just pointed out some things that were on the floor, just general information.
Okay.
And then I could look to the left and I could see my patient.
Okay. What do you do at that point in time?
What did I do?
Yes, sir. Let me strike that and let me ask you this. Were the detectives present when you arrived?
They were not.
Okay. So the detectives are not present. Some things have been pointed out to you. You've observed the body. What do you do?
At that time, I knew that the detectives were getting a search warrant. And the officer just updated me on some other information that he had. And I just started taking photographs. I put my bag that I carry and I put it in the kitchen. I didn't see anything there that was evidentiary that I was worried about, so I put my bag in the kitchen. And I got out my camera, I got out a tag that I put a case number on, and I started taking a few photographs, basically just making use of my time.
Okay. While taking those photographs, are you careful not to disturb any of the evidence?
Yes, sir.
And what are you taking pictures of, Mr. Campbell, at that point in time?
I'm taking pictures of the general scene itself, and then I would have walked over and taken some pictures of the body and the areas surrounding that.
When you're done with your photographs, have the detectives arrived?
I believe from the time I arrived until the detectives got there was approximately an hour. So I had taken numerous photographs and was basically just waiting for them.
Okay. Where were you waiting?
Mostly in the kitchen. Mostly in the kitchen area.
So after your photographs, you weren't just walking around the apartment or...
No, sir.
Once the detectives arrive, what happens?
They arrived with their equipment, and they were just started setting up to process the scene. I told them I had taken photos, then they started taking photographs, and then I took more. We stayed out of each other's way, and then they started just basically documenting the scene.
At any time, do you draw a sketch for your purposes?
I started a field sketch, yes, sir.
Mr. Campbell, I'm going to place on that monitor in front of you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 18. Oops, wrong way. Do you recognize that exhibit, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you referred to as your field sketch?
Yes, sir.
And this is a document you created while you were on the scene at 1753 Oak Trail?
I started at that time, yes. Just rough sketching, yes.
You also indicated that you took a lot of photographs.
Correct.
As well as the Massillon Police Department.
Pardon me?
As well as the Massillon
Yes,
Police
correct.
Department. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 3A through 3YY. If you would just leaf through those, sir.
Done. Refresh my memory, the timestamp ones were Massillon's?
Yes, I believe they were.
Okay. These appear to be the photographs that I took and also Massillon PD took.
Okay. Do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the scene and the location of those items of evidence that you photographed that night?
Yes, sir.
Once the photographs are taken, what's the next step in the process with regard to you as a coroner's investigator?
Generally, what I will do is, again, the police department and the coroner's office work in conjunction, so we're trying to completely document the scene. I will take my photographs, then the police will lay out their markers, whatever they want to do. I try to take my photos before they do that, if at all possible. Then, when the police have completely documented and they're comfortable with everything, I will generally ask them, are you done? Because I will not move the body, because once I move the body, the scene is altered and we're done. So I will ask them, are you done? Let me know when I can move the body. So when they get to that point and they're comfortable with everything, then I will get closer and actually start manipulating, maneuvering the body, whatever we need to do.
Now, at some point in time, when the police were all done,
Yes.
did you have an occasion to do what you've just described?
Yes, sir.
And in doing that, what are you looking for?
What I'm trying to do, again, it's cause of death and manner of death. So what I have to do is, why is this man dead? So I'm going to look at obvious injuries. I'm going to try to document as much as I can see while minimally disturbing the body. In other words, I may lift clothing, but I'm not going to completely undress because I don't want anything to fall out of pockets, things like that. So I'm going to try to document what is gross to me, meaning with my eyes. And I'm going to document whatever is surrounding the body. And I'll try to document obvious injuries as well.
And did you do that in this case?
I did.
And when you did that, do you recall what injuries you observed to the body?
There were numerous gunshot wound defects. There were what I thought was a graze mark on the right wrist. I'm going just off my drawing here. There were gunshot wounds to the chest, to the belly, I believe on the left side of the arms. There were 2 gunshot wounds to the mouth. There was a small amount of blood surrounding the head. There were teeth fragments that were found over the head.
Once you have done that cursory examination of the body, what's your next job as a chief investigator for the coroner's office?
I'll probably take more photographs as I get closer, because now I can pull shirts up, I can move hands, I can do things like that. So more photographs would have been taken by myself and law enforcement. At some of these photographs, I think I was holding something up and I handed my camera to someone else to take photos. So once we were satisfied that anything I could do with the body was done, in this case, I used a towel. I picked up the teeth fragments, I put them back in the mouth, which is how I secure them. I closed the mouth, of course I'm wearing gloves. I wrapped the towel around the head. I had already called for a private ambulance to come to the scene. The towel will guard the head injuries, hold the mouth shut. I put brown paper bags over the hands and up over what I thought was a graze. Those are taped in place. Once the private ambulance arrived, I think it was ambulance associates in this case, we laid down clean sheets and we picked the body straight up, the body right on a clean sheet, and we basically cocoon wrapped them, put 2 sheets on, put him in a body bag, and sent him to my office. And during that time, I would have attached a toe tag to him for identification.
Okay. While you were conducting the cursory examination of the body, do you recall locating any items of evidential value related to firearms?
Well, the firearm itself, yes, that was found farther, as you can see here, it says northwest there. So farther away from his head was the firearm itself, and there were other cartridge cases randomly throughout the scene.
How about on the body itself?
There was a cartridge case, would have been there were 2. There was one right next to the left hip, according to my drawing, and then one a little bit farther out. Then there was one under the table, and then the rest of them were were away from him and down towards the hallway.
I want to show you what's been known as State's Exhibit 5, which is an envelope. A smaller envelope in it than the contents. Can you pull that?
I remember documenting in my report that I thought that there was some bullet jacket material found on the jacket on the left side of the body, and I did photograph that in place.
And you took a picture of that
Yes, sir.
and left it up to the detectives to collect.
Yes, sir. I left it on the coat.
You talked about, first of all, in this sketch number 18, can you take that little stylus there and show us where the casings are that you observed in the apartment or in the location at 1753 Oak Trail?
I can. This asterisk is my notation for it. Now, on my drawing, I took a red marker and dotted it. So we had one here, 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 I believe, here, 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 and here. There should be 10. That's 9. I'm missing one. There's a 10th one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can see 9 here. 10.
And that makes 10 right there?
Correct.
Okay. Those are the locations of the shell casings. Now, the area that you circled up in the left, that X there, that's just kind of like the...
That's my reference. I just said times 10 spent cartridge cases, X equals, so that was my Asterisk.
So there was not a casing on it?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now, can you take that same stylus and indicate to me the area where you found what you referred to as teeth fragments?
Do you want to change?
It was this area here.
You can change the color if you hit it on the monitor, if that's helpful.
That's way beyond my abilities. Your
Okay,
Honor.
sorry. Just trying to be helpful with the technology.
I appreciate it. So, in this area here are where you found the teeth fragments?
Yes, sir.
I've just circled. Okay. And you indicated that you collected those and placed them back into the mouth.
Yes, sir.
And why do you do that?
Over the years, I have collected a lot of teeth fragments from scenes, and I follow that I have to preserve them as best I can. So in this case, it's just like if you happen to lose a tooth, the dentist will always tell you to put it back in the mouth. So what I have always done over these years is I take the fragments, whatever, and I put them right back in the mouth, and I close the mouth, and I make a note to make sure that I tell the pathologist the teeth fragments, whatever I recovered, are in the mouth. So when they do their examination, they will take them out, which is what was done here.
And it's because it's part of the body.
Yes, sir.
And it should be with the body.
Correct.
You've been to a lot of shootings.
Sir?
You've been to a lot of shootings?
Yes, sir.
Inside houses.
Yes.
When you did your walkthrough, did you do it? Were you looking for evidence of where this shooting may have taken place?
Yes, that's part of what I do, yes.
And as you walked down the hallway from the casings to the body, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for anything that could be either just what's telling me the story. So in this case, I was looking shell casings, I was looking for blood, I was looking for anything that might give me an idea of what happened and where.
Now that hallway wasn't real wide, was it?
No, sir. 6 feet, I'm assuming.
And in your examination of that hallway, from the casings that you indicated are back here to the body, did you find any blood on the floor?
No, sir.
Any blood on the walls?
No, sir.
Mr. Campbell, have you been to a lot of scenes where people have suffered gunshot wounds to the head?
Yes, sir.
Have some of those been self-inflicted?
Self-inflicted, yes, ma'am.
Some of them have been homicides?
Yes, sir.
Do those individuals usually travel great distances from where those wounds are inflicted?
Objection.
Overruled based on your experience and that, just on that experience.
Based on my experience, I cannot remember an occasion where an individual took a gunshot wound that entered the cranium, the skull, and they traveled at all.
No further questions.
Ms. Mills?
Good afternoon, Mr. Campbell.
Good afternoon.
I'm Laura Mills, and I represent Colleen McKernan. I think it's been quite a few years since I've seen you.
2004,
Is that what it was?
long ago.
Long ago. Well, very nice to see you today. I understand that you have been a sworn police officer since 1986. Is that correct?
Sworn, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you first received the call that evening on December 31st, 2014, I think you said you were at home,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
All right. And do you recall who called?
I would have received a call from one of the dispatchers at the Stark County Sheriff's Department because after hours our phones are forwarded. So what Massillon Dispatch would have done is they would call the SO, who in turn will call my cell phone.
Okay. So you get a call from the cell phone. It's a dispatcher. What did he tell you at that point in time?
What I was told was that, and this is from the Stark County Dispatcher, Sheriff's, they said Massillon has a shooting, and I said, okay, where? They gave me the address. I wrote the address and the time down. And I said, they tell you what happened? They said that they gave me a quick sentence as to what they had been told had happened.
Okay. And that quick sentence that you were told, did you indicate that in your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we'll take a look at that in a moment, but I believe it says, I shot my husband and I am doing CPR. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Okay. So then at that point in time, you would have gotten into your vehicle and went directly to 1753 Oak Trail,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And when you first got there, how many police officers did you see?
I believe that there were 2 Massillon cruisers with 2 officers there, and there was a Massillon officer standing at the top of the outside stairs. I believe there were 3.
Okay. And so you're closing your eyes to this, so I wish I could see what you're saying, Mr. Kimball, but the police cruisers that you're describing, are they in the front of the house?
They were in front of me. I pulled up, the residents would be here, the 2 cruisers would have been, because I usually will park back, because when I go to a scene, I don't get blocked in by everybody else, so I tend to do that. And I believe that the 2 Massillon cruisers were here on the left, and then the officer standing at the top of the stairs, I believe. I didn't document it.
Okay, so I appreciate that, Mr. Kimball. And the 2 cruisers that you saw, were there any police officers inside those cruisers?
I don't remember anybody inside. I remember officers standing outside.
Okay. And then as you approached the house, how many officers did you see in the yard?
In the yard?
Yes.
I don't remember anybody in the yard proper, just the officer at the top of the stairs.
Okay, so you had to enter into the house to see an officer.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so if I get what you're telling me, Mr. Campbell, is actually you didn't make contact with anyone until you entered the house.
I may have said hello to the officers. I don't recall that, though.
Okay. Once you were inside the house, did you speak to the officers about what had happened?
I did.
All right, and what were you told?
Basically just reinforcing what I had been told on the way over, or prior, when I got the initial call.
Did they indicate to you that Ms. McKernan had stated she had been attacked that evening?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so you didn't have that information?
That is correct.
Okay. What's the first thing you did once you went up the stairs?
I was met by another Massillon officer. Excuse me. I was met by another Massillon officer, and he just filled in some of the other, there's cartridge cases here, we've got a bunch over here. He just basically pointed out things that he had already observed.
Okay, and we've already looked at this picture. There were a few shell casings right at the top of the stairs, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and you said another police officer was then pointing out additional shell casings to you.
That is correct.
And in addition to that officer and yourself, was there anyone else in that hallway?
I believe he and I were the only ones there until the detective got there. I don't recall if one of the other officers from outside might have come in and then went back out again. I don't remember that.
Okay, so you have an officer pointing out the shell casings, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and I think during direct examination, you said that the hallway you thought was possibly 6 feet wide?
I'm just guessing, just wingspan, it's, if I remember correctly, it's approximately this wide.
Okay. Would it surprise you if I told you I measured it and it was 36 inches?
Then it's 36 inches. I'm assuming it was narrow.
It was narrow?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the hallway that you were looking at didn't have any pictures, photographs on the walls, correct?
Going down the right side of the hallway, in other words, I get to the top of the stairs, I would have run right into the hallway. If I make a left face, I'm looking down towards the body. The kitchen would be on the right. I don't recall anything on those walls. I don't believe so.
And we've kind of been referring to the floor as a hardwood floor, but it was kind of a laminate wood. Do you recall that?
It looked like a bowling alley floor.
Bowling alley floor. All right, and I assume on that bowling alley floor that those hollow, light shell casings could roll.
Certainly.
And they could even bounce.
Of course. Sure.
And I would assume that on those walls that didn't have any pictures, that they could bounce off the wall.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and in your experience, Mr. Kimball, I assume that you would believe that shell casings could bounce with any might need.
Yes, ma'am. I asked if I can do anything to help them or just stay out of the way.
Okay, so if they came up to you and said, Mr. Campbell, would you please help us bag these shell casings, you would do that?
I would do that.
Right. Did anyone ask you to take the sketch that you took that evening?
To do what, ma'am?
did anyone ask you to take the sketch that you took that evening that we took a look
No,
at?
that's what I would normally do.
Okay, so you would normally do that in every particular case?
It depends. Sometimes I'll use two cameras. A lot of times I just do the sketch to jog my memory later for when I'm writing my report. It's just whatever I feel I need to do at that time. I may not do it every time, no.
Do you recall how much time elapsed from the point in time that you walked up the stairs, the officer indicated the shell casings, and you started to make your sketch?
It was kind of an ongoing process. I would have flipped my paper over and started writing at that time. I may have added to it, and I think I even added to it the next day after I reviewed my photos.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put it up there so we can take a look, and for purposes of the record, I'm going to indicate the defendant's Exhibit C is the same as the State Exhibit 18.
Thank you.
Yes, Defendant C is the same as State 18. Okay, Mr. Campbell, this is in fact the sketch we were discussing. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall what you sketched at the scene and what you sketched the next day?
No. I mean, I think I put the teeth in later when I reviewed the photos, and I took my red marker and I dotted my asterisks. And I may have added to it later as well as I looked at my photographs to do that, but everything that's here, I backed up with photographs.
Absolutely, I understand. Can you do me a favor, and like you did with the state, would you circle where the teeth are indicated on
They
that
were
particular
in this
sketch?
area. They're not exact. They were in here, here. I can't remember if I had 3 or 4. I'm just dotting them, but this just means north.
Those 3 dots you believe are the shatter, and obviously we see the gun in your sketch behind the teeth, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and I think today, but I believe that you have indicated at one point in time that that gun was approximately 4 feet from the head of Mr. McKernan. Is that correct?
Whatever I had written, yes, or testified to, that's correct. It was, I'd have to look at my photos, approximately 4 feet, yes.
Okay, so if that gun is approximately 4 feet from the head of Mr. McKernan, then can we assume that the teeth fragments were approximately 2 feet from the head of Mr. McKernan?
I would say they would have been within that,
Somewhere around 2 feet?
or less.
Okay. And those teeth were found beyond the head, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And whatever teeth were at that scene, Mr. Campbell, you would have put back in the mouth as you
That's
testified, correct? All right, so is it safe for us all to assume that there were no teeth left there at the scene?
You mean when I left?
Yes.
There was nothing left of that body when I left.
Right, I assume you did a thorough investigation, found every teeth fragment that would have existed.
Everything that I found, I got on my hands and knees and picked it up.
And I believe that to be the case. So when you left, there were no teeth fragments left on the floor, correct?
That's, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, your sketch also indicates the infamous straw, I think, that we've been talking about previously today. And then it looks as if you have a question mark. Is that right?
Yeah, I put a question mark. When I look at something like that, I would just say, do I know for sure what it is? Cell phone. I know what that is. I look at this tube. Is this a straw? It has the appearance of that, but when it's analyzed later as evidence, they may say it's something different. But to my eye at the scene, it looks like a straw, so I put straw with a question mark, meaning that's what it looked like at that moment when I was looking at it.
Makes perfect sense, Mr. Campbell. And I assume that that's the reason that you may have had a question is it wasn't the typical length of a straw. It was actually a cut straw, was it not?
It was a shorter tube.
Okay,
Yes,
it's a
ma'am.
short straw. And you referred to it as evidence, because in your mind at that point in time, it was evidence. Fair to
It's
say?
near the body. In my mind, it's evidence. Yes, ma'am.
And I would assume that if you had your police officer hat on that particular evening, that you would have bagged that straw as evidence, correct?
It was near the body. I would have taken everything. Yes, ma'am.
Did you see anyone remove the straw that evening?
Remove that particular item? No, ma'am. I didn't see it.
Okay. And while you were making your sketch, do you recall seeing any other police officers making their own sketch?
I remember everyone writing, whether they were sketching or writing details or measurements or that. I didn't look over their shoulder, so I cannot tell you that.
Okay, you didn't compare your sketch to anyone else's sketch?
No, ma'am, no.
And I think during direct, Mr. Campbell, you were asked kind of what your role is, and you indicated that you do investigate the scene because you're trying to figure out what the story is.
The basic story, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you recall how long you were in 1753 Oak Trail on that particular evening, December 31st?
I believe approximately 3 hours. I usually don't document my end time. I just go leave when I leave. I always document when I arrive, though.
Okay. And even after investigating that scene and spending the 3 hours that you did, Mr. Campbell, you certainly do not have an opinion that this was not self-defense, correct?
Sustained. Ladies and gentlemen, any references to legal terminology will be defined for you by me, and that ultimate decision is going to be yours as to what has or has not been established. So what the lawyers say is not evidence.
Mr. Campbell, you cannot tell who was the initial aggressor that evening on December 31st, 2014, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you have an opinion as to who was the initial aggressor on December 31st, 2014?
Sustained.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may, because we're not going to have you turn around and talk to me from the podium.
Mr. Campbell, your role that evening on December 31st, 2014 was not to make any kind of legal determination as to what had happened. Is that correct?
You are correct, ma'am.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Mr. Campbell, can you see that?
I can see it. Difficult to read.
It is very difficult to read, I agree. And if you would look at the third line down, is that just actually your signature there where it says Harry Campbell?
It looks like my name.
Okay. And then it looks like to the left, we can't really see the time that you signed in there. Is that fair to say?
I can't read it either, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall signing into a sign-in sheet that evening?
I did not
December
sign that.
31st?
I just went up to the officer, he asked who I am, and I gave him my name, and then he would have written this. I don't write on their sign-in sheets.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I thought you had said that it looked like your handwriting. I apologize.
No, ma'am, it looks like my name,
Okay.
and not my handwriting. I did not write on the sheet. I would have told him my name. That would be the officer's handwriting, because they all look the same to me.
Okay. Now, you had stated that you were at the scene for approximately 3 hours.
I'm guessing at that, ma'am.
Okay. And do you recall which one of the police officers stayed with you during those 3 hours?
Well, the officer who was inside, his name escapes me right now, he was there the entire time, and then the 2 detectives came afterwards. So it would have been the 4 of us in there for the duration. Now, another officer may have walked in for a time and left, and I didn't pay attention to him. I was more focused on what I had to do.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, we were talking about a report that you had done in this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I believe that we talked about the first paragraph of this report. Is this, which has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit A, in fact your report from that evening?
Yes, ma'am. Is it okay if I look at my paper one?
Absolutely, it's probably easier to see. Thank you.
Okay, I have it. Go ahead.
Okay. Is this the only report then that you would have issued from that evening?
Well, this, and I would have had a handwritten note in which my sketches on the back of it, which had been my, just my quick writing of demographics and times.
Okay. So let's just make sure that I understand. The documentation from that evening would have been what ended up being page 2.
This is the official report that was finished and then my signature. Yes, ma'am.
Official report. We previously had looked at Defendant's Exhibit C, which was your sketch, correct?
Correct.
And then are you saying there is some additional handwritten notes that you took that evening?
There would be another, I have what's called just a page 1, which just has the case number, the name, date of birth, social security number, address, and that's just a handwritten, and that's all transferred into the computer.
Okay. And we don't have the handwritten version of that?
Unless the prosecutor has a copy. I don't believe I have a copy of my actual page 1 and 2, but it's going to include everything here.
Okay. And did you in fact take that photograph?
Can you roll it up and see if there's a date stamp on it?
You can zoom in and out.
Other way.
You need to hit the little dial.
How about if I turn
There
it
you go.
upside down?
That's perfect. This one does not have a date stamp, so that should have been mine.
Okay,
I
so.
believe Masterlin's photos had the date stamp. Mine did not.
Understood, Mr. Kimball. So you believe that this was actually taken with your camera, correct?
Yes,
All right, and I just want to make sure then that this white straw that we have been talking about, is that the white straw in this photograph that you had referred to in your sketch?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And again, you never saw where this white straw ended up?
That is correct. I just know that it did not go with me.
Were there any officers moving the body at any point in time before you started to put the teeth back in and do what you need to do?
Negative. They know better that they don't touch unless I tell them to. Now, later, I may have had an officer holding him up while I took a photo, or I may have been holding him and they took a photo, but it will only be at my direction. Nobody touches the body but me.
Did you see any dogs that evening?
Any what now?
Dogs.
I didn't hear you.
Dogs. Animals. Dogs. D-O-G-S.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dogs. Sorry.
Dogs, if that's the Jaws. Dogs, I did not see any dogs. I think that came up in conversation that they had a dog, or it was in the basement, or maybe I heard it. The subject of the dog came up at some point in time, but no, I never saw any dog at the scene.
Okay. And what about a cat?
I never saw any animals at the scene.
And again, you have no idea who could have kicked the shell casings, moved the shell casings, whether animals or Colleen or other officers before you arrived
You are correct.
that evening, correct?
You are correct.
First, let me approach so you can see this a little easier, Mr. Campbell, before I just put it up on the screen. Have you seen that photograph before, Mr. Campbell?
I looked at these, yes. This was taken during the autopsy at my office.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you present during that autopsy?
I was not.
But you've seen this photograph before,
I looked through them, yes, ma'am.
okay? And I'm going to briefly put this has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit NNN, and I'm primarily looking at the inside of the pocket. Do you see where I'm looking, Mr.
Correct.
McKernan's pocket? Do you have any idea how the blood inside of his pocket ended up there?
I have no idea how it ended up there, ma'am.
Okay. Do you wear protective gloves when you're at the scene?
Yes,
Do any officers who are touching the body wear protective gloves?
absolutely.
Okay. And if blood had gotten on those gloves, would they have changed before they would have put their hands in the pocket or moved anything about Mr. McKernan's body?
Would they change the gloves?
Yes.
I can't say if they did or not. If I had to say generally, probably not. But I don't know that for a fact.
Would you not try to preserve everything about the body as much as possible?
You mean changing gloves continually? I suppose that it would, but it's normally not something that we do.
Okay. Do you recall whether or not there was any blood inside that pocket at the crime scene?
I don't recall that I examined the inside of the pockets at the crime scene.
Okay.
Generally, I would just pat the outside to see if there's anything in there.
Mr. Campbell, you said you were not present for the autopsy, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You recall that Mr. Barr asked you a question relative to what your opinion was if the first shot to the right lip, he asked your opinion of generally what that would do.
Objection.
It's
Can we
to the
approach?
number, yes. So that was sustained, but I'll allow you to rephrase it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Campbell, I believe that the question that was posed to you is if you have investigated or arrived at other scenes in which there had been head wounds. Do you recall being
Yes,
asked
ma'am.
that on direct examination? And you had indicated that you had been on other scenes in which there had been head wounds, correct?
Correct.
All right. Approximately how many scenes?
There's been many. I can't give you a specific number, ma'am, but there's been many over 20, almost 23 years.
Okay. And you were saying that on those particular scenes that you believed that the individual did not move beyond the head wound.
It's been my experience. I cannot remember any individuals who sustained an injury similar to this that was anything other than instantly unresponsive.
But certainly you're not here to say that you compared any of those scenes to this particular scene, correct?
Every scene's its own.
Every scene's its own,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
every trajectory pattern from a bullet is its own, correct?
Everything is its own. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And certainly you're not here to say that every head wound would be lethal,
Correct.
okay? So there would be certain circumstances in which someone could have a head wound and it would not be lethal or would not be an immediate death, correct?
Well, if I'm wounded, it is lethal. I don't go when they're not lethal. I'm not trying to be smart about it, but if I go there, they're dead. So, and every one of mine, they will be lethal. Now, whether the the first shot was to the body and to the head later, or the head first to the body later. That's not my world. I don't mean to say that. It doesn't, in my investigation, it doesn't make any difference to me. I have a head injury, I have a body injury, I have all these injuries. But if I go there, it's lethal.
Okay, and that helps me, Mr. Campbell. So obviously, you're not going to be involved in any shootings in which the person survived, even if there was a head wound, correct?
That's correct. Now, I have had individuals who were shot and died later in hospitals, long time after the event. I've had those. They may still be a homicide, but they may be weeks after the initial event, yes.
Okay, so it's a little unfair to say that in your experience that every case you've been involved in that they haven't survived a head wound, because quite frankly, every case that you're involved in, they don't survive regardless of where the shot occurs, correct?
If I'm there, it's because they're dead.
They're dead.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Campbell, did you notice anyone taking any kind of GSR testing on the floor or on the walls?
Any what kind of testing?
GSR.
Any gunshot residue on the walls?
Yes.
No. The detectives looked at the walls and I looked at the walls. I got on my hands and knees and looked at the floor. I have a very good flashlight and I put it right on the wall because the way those walls were set up, generally if there's a nick or a mark on the wall, you can take a flashlight and you can turn it in such a way that it'll shadow. So if there's a defect in the wall, you will see a tiny shadow, sometimes. So I simply looked down the wall very close to see if there's any marks or anything. I was looking for blood, but I saw no blood, I saw no marks on the walls. I got on my hands and knees at the floor without disturbing the cartridge cases, and I literally crawled on my hands and knees going up towards the body looking for blood. I found none.
Okay. But your role was to be looking for blood and not necessarily GSR, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
The officers would be looking for GSR.
Well, they're going to be looking for evidence in general. I mean, gunshot residue in my world is different from maybe what you're describing.
Describe for it to me in your world, Mr.
In my world, gunshot residue could either be something we're going to look for on the hands, and that'll be a test that's done. Usually the law enforcement will do that. Or do we have powder residue around idea to a crime lab checking the body at the instance of the shot? Look at it under the better light. I own just about every variation of the Glock handgun.
Ms. Mills asked you about these round, soft cartridges rolling on that hard floor.
Yes.
Now, I've already diagrammed. Are you familiar? Have you shot a Glock 26?
Have I what, sir?
Shot a Glock 26 like the one I showed
Oh,
you?
many times, yes,
Case
sir.
Exhibit 14. And in fact, didn't you just complete some schooling on it?
I'm also a certified Glock armor, yes, sir.
Now, you indicated before that this is a shell casing, this is a shell casing, this is a shell casing, this is a shell, did I get that right? Yeah, shell casing, shell
No,
casing.
back up, sir. That's just a number 8.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's 8 feet. Yes, sir.
There, there, and there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, those are 4 shell casings.
Correct.
That Glock states Exhibit 14, when if you fire, where the shell casings get ejected to.
They will eject outward and to the right.
So that, out and to my right.
They will eject out to the right.
Okay, out to the right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then there's 2 casings here, correct?
That is correct.
And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 casings here.
Correct.
Someone shot 10 shell casings in that hallway, that those casings could roll or bounce or tumble all the way over to here? No.
Overruled. It's been opened by you.
No, sir. No,
Thank you. No further questions.
Any read cross?
Yes, Your Honor. And that you own a Glock 26.